The true benefit of taking a long-term perspective. During this crazy time of the pandemic and the elections in the US, it has created a lot of stress and anxiety out in the world, and I am not immune to that. I have experienced that too. So one of the key strategies that I want to share with you is taking a long-term perspective. Now, saying, hey, take a long-term perspective, it's going to make you feel better, and actually doing it are two different things. But I can tell you, if you can bridge that gap, you're taking a long-term perspective, you will experience less stress. You will be able to prioritize your actions much more effectively. And the best part is it actually improves your relationships because you're not just talking about and perseverating on the immediate term issues facing yourself and the world. You're taking more of a global perspective, and it makes conversations just a lot more enjoyable. So one of the key strategies I do to take a long-term perspective is I listen to authors, podcasts, and read books and articles from people that are taking a long-term perspective. Two that you can use that I really have been enjoying. Ryan Holiday's daily Stoic. This week he talked about the long arc of history and how it bends towards a more positive world. And a lot of the Stoicism ideas are geared in terms of a more longer-term perspective. And just reading this every day sort of calibrates your mindset into a longer term perspective, thinking about bigger, more impactful things. The other thing is I've been listening to a podcast, even though I haven't read the book yet, but it's been recommended several times on the CEO sessions. It's called Sapiens by Yuval Harare. I've been listening to a podcast with him included, where he basically talks about world history instead of focusing in on just the mundane day-to-day details. So that's one thing, is to listen to authors and podcasts. And by the way, the CEO Sessions podcast, to plug my own podcast where we interview CEOs. This is a common thread among CEOs and the C-suite, is that they're aware of what's happening day to day, but they're thinking longer term, and that is definitely a key success strategy for your company and your career. Another way to think about this is to get out in nature. Just walking around in nature, you're surrounded by trees, or in a forest where these trees have been around for years and years and years. If you're out in Colorado and you're watching this, you probably can look up at the Rocky Mountains, but getting out in nature is a great way to be reminded of the long-term trajectory of history and how we can use that to think about our thoughts and how we're thinking about things in a global perspective and not getting caught up in the immediate near-term issues. And the other one is just to reduce your news intake. News is by definition current and immediate type stuff. And it's there to catch your eye and often triggers a lot of stress. So if you're gonna do news, check out the Good newspaper. It's a good news website, newspaper that comes out periodically. Focus on the good stuff, although make sure you're being aware of what's happening out in the world, but don't get caught up in that. Again, minimize your news and in fact, focus on being the news, right? Create your own good news out there and spread it. So take these three ideas, try maybe one of them in your day right now. Notice how it can improve your day, help you prioritize more effectively, help you take a longer term perspective, and ultimately reduce